What if the USS Gerald R. Ford appeared at Pearl Harbor, 1941? December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The sun is rising, the Pacific is calm, and thousands of sailors are just waking up, maybe thinking about coffee and a lazy Sunday. They don't know that 6 Japanese carriers are just beyond the horizon, launching over 350 aircraft in the biggest surprise attack America has ever faced. In our timeline, this day becomes a date which will live in infamy. Battleships sink, planes burn, and the United States is dragged into World War II. But not today. Because tied up at Ford Island isn't just the battleship Arizona, it's the USS Gerald R. Ford, a 100,000-ton floating fortress from the year 2017, the most advanced aircraft carrier ever built. And against it, the Imperial Japanese Navy is about to discover what happens when a samurai sword meets a laser-guided missile. The Gerald R. Ford is basically a floating city, longer than 3 football fields, taller than a 20-story building, nuclear-powered, meaning it never runs out of gas. This thing doesn't sip fuel, it makes its own electricity, almost 700 megawatts, enough to keep every light on in Honolulu glowing for years. But raw size isn't what makes it terrifying. It's what lives on top of it. Over 75 aircraft, not prop-driven relics, not 250-mile-an-hour zeros. We're talking F-35 Lightnings II, stealth fighters with radar cross-sections smaller than a bird, missiles that hit from dozens of miles away, and computers smarter than every admiral in the Japanese fleet combined. In 1941, a dogfight means circling and spraying bullets. In 2017, it means locking a target and deleting it before the enemy even knows he's been painted. The Ford can launch one of these jets every 45 seconds thanks to electromagnetic catapults that hurl fighters into the sky faster than slingshots on steroids. Imagine watching a wooden torpedo bomber sputtering along at 200 miles per hour, then seeing an F-35 rip past at Mach 1.6. For the Japanese pilots, it would look less like war and more like aliens have joined the fight. And the carrier itself isn't exactly defenseless. It has rolling airframe missiles, electronic warfare systems, and close-in phalanx cannons that chew through aircraft like paper shredders on caffeine. In 1941, battleships fire 14-inch shells at each other over the horizon. The Gerald R. Ford swats airplanes out of the sky like mosquitoes, while its pilots casually bomb your fleet from 100 miles away. So, picture this. Japan is flying toward Pearl Harbor with the confidence of a heavyweight champ walking into the ring. They're about to find out they're fighting Mike Tyson, armed with a lightsaber, 7:48 a.m. The first wave of Japanese aircraft appears on the horizon. 183 planes, torpedo bombers, dive bombers, and the famous Zero fighters. They roar toward Oahu in tight formation, confident that they're about to smash the American Pacific Fleet. But today, the Pacific Fleet has backup. The USS Gerald R. Ford spins up its radar. Within seconds, the ship's sensors light up like Christmas morning. Every single Japanese aircraft is tracked, labeled, and prioritized. To the sailors on board, it's not a battle. It's a video game. Target locked. Launch the birds. The flight deck crew springs into action. F-35s thunder off the deck, one after another, climbing into the Hawaiian sky. These aren't noisy prop planes belching smoke. They're silent predators, stealthy and fast. The Japanese formation keeps flying forward, blissfully unaware that death is already slicing through the clouds toward them. The first missile goes off the rail, then another, then 10 more. In an instant, the leading edge of the Japanese strike force simply disappears. To the pilots behind, it looks like their comrades just vanish. No tracers, no dogfight, no warning. Just smoke trails, fireballs, and silence. Confusion ripples through the formation. Some pilots dive low, hugging the waves. Others climb desperately, trying to spot the invisible attacker. But there is nothing to see. Against an F-35, there is no duel. There is only alive and deleted. The survivors press on because that's what they were trained to do. Torpedo bombers drop to attack altitude, lining up on Battleship Row. But they're not facing sleepy anti-aircraft gunners anymore. The Ford's close-in defenses open fire. Phalanx cannons roar, spitting thousands of rounds per minute. Missiles launch in rapid succession. The bombers never reach their targets. It's like trying to throw paper airplanes into a blender. Dive bombers scream downward, aiming for the giant new carrier itself. Bad idea. Their bombs never land. Some are intercepted mid-air. Others fall harmlessly into the harbor as their planes disintegrate around them. By the time the attack is over, the Ford hasn't even lost a plane, let alone taken damage. Meanwhile, 200 miles north, Admiral Nagumo paces aboard the carrier Akagi. Reports from the first wave are coming in, or rather, not coming in. Whole squadrons fail to return. Survivors radio in nonsense about invisible planes, impossible weapons, and American ships that shouldn't exist. Nagumo, stubborn and unwilling to admit failure, orders the second wave into the sky. Another 170 aircraft. Japan's best, committed to the strike. Back at Pearl, Ford's radar sees them before they've even finished forming up. Another launch cycle. More F-35s streak into the air. Japanese pilots who once dominated the Pacific suddenly find themselves swatted from the sky like flies. Zeros, symbols of Japan's aerial supremacy, burn and crash before they can even spot an enemy. Some try kamikaze dives years before kamikazes were invented. They don't even make it within a mile of the ship. The Ford shrugs them off like gnats. By mid-morning, the Imperial Japanese Navy's air wings are gone. Hundreds of planes, Japan's finest aviators, erased. The Pacific, once their playground, has become a graveyard. And now the Gerald R. Ford goes on the offensive. F-35s form up, loaded with precision bombs and air-to-surface missiles. Their targets, the Japanese carriers that launched this doomed assault. The Akagi, the Kaga, the Soryu, the Hiryu, the very ships that made Pearl Harbor possible. In 1941, they are unstoppable, but against stealth jets from 2017, they're nothing but sitting ducks. The F-35s reach the Japanese fleet before lunch. Flying low, stealthy, and faster than anything in 1941 skies, they lock onto the enemy carriers. Bomb bay doors open. Precision-guided munitions drop silently, then detonate with apocalyptic force. Akagi erupts in fire. Kaga splits open, aviation fuel exploding like fireworks. Soryu and Hiryu follow, each carrier consumed by flames and chaos. Japanese sailors fire anti-aircraft guns desperately into the empty sky. They may as well be throwing rocks at ghosts. Within hours, the pride of the Imperial Navy, ships that 6 months ago had attacked Pearl Harbor, are burning wrecks on the Pacific. But even gods from the future have limits. The Gerald R. Ford carries a finite number of aircraft and weapons. F-35s need fuel and bombs, and in 1941 there are no supply chains, no satellites, no precision-guided stockpiles waiting to reload them. Once the magazines run low, the carrier is just a giant steel hotel floating in enemy waters. And while Japan's carriers are gone, battleships and submarines still lurk. A lucky torpedo from an unseen sub could change everything. Future technology can dominate, but it can't make the crew immortal. Every battle still carries risk. Still, the outcome is undeniable. On this alternate December 7th, Pearl Harbor is not a day of infamy. It is the day Japan lost the war before it even began. 4 carriers sunk, hundreds of irreplaceable pilots gone. The Pacific balance of power shattered in a single morning. American losses? A few gallons of jet fuel and maybe some bruised egos on the Japanese side. The Gerald R. Ford would be remembered not as just a warship, but as the Angel of Pearl Harbor, a phantom carrier that turned tragedy into the most lopsided victory in naval history. And if you're wondering what would happen if an Abrams tank rolled into Gettysburg, or if a squadron of Apaches showed up at Waterloo, stick around. That's a story for another day. Thanks for watching.